Welcome, dear participants, to our online event, More Projects in Less Time with Concerto. Hi, Michael. Good to see you.
Hello, Uwe. Thank you.
So, why are we talking about this topic? Sustainable performance improvements, more projects in less time. This means more sales, throughput, profit, and cash requires changes in the behavior of managers and employees, obviously. To implement changes, management attention is required. But in order to sustain these changes and find potential for further substantial improvements, software can be very helpful. From my point of view, there are only a few systems in the world that have the functionalities that are existential for more projects in less time. And Concerto, from Realization Technologies, is a pioneer in this field and one of the world's leading systems in this area. So today I have the great honor and pleasure to welcome Michael Hamlin, the President Field Operations at Realization Technologies. Michael has over 20 years of work experience leading projects and facilitating changes in multi-project environments. During the beginning of his career, Michael worked as an engineer and project manager in a steel foundry, leading several successful projects for both external and internal customers. For the past 17 years with Realization, Michael has led, managed, and overseen more than 100 customer implementations of critical chain focused on increasing throughput and on-time delivery in construction, engineer to order, maintenance and repair, and new product development industries. Some of the customers Michael has worked with include ThyssenKrupp, Delta Airlines, Procter & Gamble, Siemens, Godrej Properties, the US Navy, the US Air Force, and the US Marine Corps. Michael holds an MBA from the University of Portland and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Oregon State University. Good to see you again, Michael. Thank you that you are here.
Thank you, Uwe. Thank you for letting me join you today. It's truly an honor to do this webinar with you, and I look forward to talking about how organizations can get more projects in less time.
Very good. Thank you. So most of you know me. My name is Uwe Techt. I'm the CEO of VISTEM, but today is about Concerto and Realization, and Michael, not about me. So I will skip my own presentation. So today we together will explain the core elements of more projects in less time and show how Concerto supports these requirements. For your questions, please use the question and answer tool in GoToWebinar. We have two colleagues in the background. This is Craig Homan from Realization. He is Vice President for Strategic Accounts. I think he didn't arrive yet, but he will here in a few minutes, I hope. And the other one is Frank Nowak, Director Operations at VISTEM. And if you have questions, they will answer those questions in the background. Franz, I think you are here. Maybe you can show your cam for a short minute.
Hello.
Hi, Franz. Okay.
I wish you all the best and a good session, and please put your question into the answer tool and we will try to answer them as good as possible. Okay, and then I leave you again with the content of this webinar.
Thank you.
Hey, Uwe. Uwe, Craig says he's trying to get in, but is waiting for someone to let him in.
Oh.
Do you see something?
Maybe Franz can have a look at this.
Okay. Thanks.
So this is our agenda. short introduction into more projects in less time. I only have 4 slides about that, so don't worry. After that, we will have a talk, an interview between both of us, Michael and me, about how Concerto enables more projects in less time. Then we can talk about open questions if time is available and if questions are available, and then obviously conclusion and goodbye. Before we dive into the content, I'd like you, the participants, to answer some small questions. I have prepared a short survey in GoToWebinar and will present it to you. Here it is. And please choose the statements that best apply to you. You can choose 1 or 2 as it fits to you, so that we can see where you are standing. So what we want to know is if you are familiar with the concept of more projects in less time or not, and if you know a lot about Concerto or nearly nothing, and whether or not you have specific questions that you know now that you will ask them. Okay, thank you very much for answering these questions and give us a little bit of a feeling where you are. Hi, Craig. Good to see you. We can't hear you, but we can see you.
You're muted, Craig.
Good morning. Sorry for being late, gentlemen.
Hi, Craig. We just started, and we have seen already Franz. He's in the background too, and we hope you can stay with us and say something if you feel that it's good to do.
Will do.
Okay, so these are your answers to my quick poll. As we assumed, most of you are familiar with the concept of more projects in less time, so that it's okay when I only use 4 slides to explain it again. And many of you don't know Concerto, so Michael, it's very good that we have time to show the specific contribution of Concerto to more projects in less time. Okay, so I will dive into the content, and I will make it short. Experience shows that in multi-project organizations, again and again, the following performance improvements are possible. A lot of throughput increase, reduction of lead time, and increased reliability. I will not go into the figures, you can read them yourself, but if it's real and it doesn't come from heaven, those improvements, we have to ask the question, how can this be? How is it possible that an organization can have this increase in performance?
Hello,
From my
I
point
think
of view,
we don't see your screen currently. Is this right?
oh, you don't see my screen. I can change that. What's about now?
Wonderful.
Very good. Okay, so how is that possible? And from my point of view, this is possible because in a typical company, a lot of management attention, resources, and lead time are wasted. And in the core, there are 2 or 3 mechanisms who do that. The first one is the so-called vicious cycle of work in process. If we have high work in process, if work in process increases, we have long lead times because of multitasking, thin distribution of resources, and so on. High work in process makes long lead times. If we have promised delivery dates and the lead times become longer, we have delays. And if we have delays, there is a tendency to start earlier. But if we start earlier, we have increase in work in process. And this causes waste in management attention, resources, and lead time. You all know about that. And the other thing is Parkinson's law, obviously. We try to have project reliability by task or phases reliability. If we try to do that, we will have long tasks in the plan, and we are not able to finish early. So a project can't finish early. Murphy is living, and so projects are late. And if it's typical in a company that projects are late, there is a tendency to create more detailed plans and to look even stronger if everyone in the process hits his due date. So plans become longer, but they are still not reliable. And in those companies and those organizations, we see more and more rules, reports, targets, key figures, and so on. And this not only happens in a single company, but very often we see this in the corporation of a company with the partners of the company. So in our own company and in cooperation with customers and suppliers. This is the problem, that management attention, resources, and lead time are wasted. So what can we do about that? Most of you know about it. What we should do is stagger the projects so that we do less projects at the same time in order to have more management focus, improved synchronization, less bad multitasking, better resources, better and more resources for the projects. And so we have shorter tasks, less waiting time, more projects at the same time. This is the idea. And even if we do less projects, but don't go down to only one. Now, if we go down to only one, there can't be a conflict between 2 projects regarding management attention or resources. But if we have more projects, not only one, there will be conflicts, and we need an answer for that. And this is why we think that a company should have clear and robust priorities, so that in the case that still 2 or more projects compete on management attention or on resources, there is an answer what has to be done at first and what has to be done then, so that we can act in a mode that Sanjeev titles Focus and Finish, and I think Michael will say something about that. So overall, there are 2 changes compared to normal companies, traditional companies. Let's do fewer projects at the same time. This makes shorter, faster projects. And let's have robust technical priorities. We need both together. This in our own company, and best in cooperation with customers and suppliers. And from that, we get all the things we want to have: reliability, shorter delivery times, and increased capacity. So that's the idea of more project in less time. And now we want to talk about what's the contribution of a software system of Concerto to more projects in less time. And I have prepared some questions about that. And obviously, I've talked with Michael about these questions in preparing this webinar, so that he is comfortable with answering those questions. Thank you again, Michael, that you are here for those ideas.
Thank you.
It's okay for you when we start with the questions?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, very good. So some people say, and I hear it very often, that a multi-project software is primarily there to create transparency. I do not agree with that. Rather, software should help to increase the performance of the company. That means being reliable, accelerate projects, deliver more projects per year. And if I would use the software for that, I'd like to see in the software, is the company getting better or worse? So can we see that in Concerto, whether the company becomes better or worse, and how does it look like? So I think I have to give you the screen now so that you can show something.
Yes, Uwe. So yeah, in terms of looking at Concerto and how we can understand, sorry, let me, are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll kind of, we'll start on this idea of how do I know if my company is improving in terms of producing projects faster, producing more projects. And so Concerto has a lot of metrics built into it, but I'm going to focus on just a couple today that are answering your direct question, Uwe. And the first one is, we call it throughput, right? So you can think of this as, you know, am I producing more projects than I did last year? And am I producing projects at the rate at which I expected to, right? So take a quick look at this here. I'll turn off the reset just so that we see a trend over time. Okay. And so this all starts with the assumption that we have built a portfolio, or what we like to call a pipeline of projects, that is meeting our business need. So let's say we wanted to increase the throughput or the number of projects 20%. We will assume that we have a pipeline or a portfolio that has 20% more projects in it than what we did last year, or whatever that target is you're trying to achieve. And this kind of olive or brown colored line, depending on your monitor, is representing the plan that we had put in place of a cumulative rate at which we would complete our projects. So you can see this first month, looking back in July, we would have completed a couple of projects. Then in August, we would have completed 2 more to give us a total of 4, and so on. The blue line represents actually how we are doing, or how we did, in terms of completing those projects and meeting our throughput targets. Okay? And Concerto then can also go out in the future and look at, based on where we are with projects today and how complete they are, will we continue to meet our throughput targets, or are we running behind and we're going to start to miss that line? So this is the first one, and if you want to look at this year over year, one of the things that it has is it has the ability to reset on, we call it the fiscal year, but you can set what that date is. So I can look at the same report, and I can see here that I ended the year in December, and then I'm resetting in January and taking back off, right? And so this is actually showing you that some of my projects that were supposed to finish last year actually completed late and had to catch up in January. So it gives you a couple of different ways to be able to look at it. but the end goal is just answering this question of, are you meeting this increased throughput target that you've put on?
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just 1 second, Uwe. In line with that, then also there is this answering this question of are our projects going faster? So again, we should be building projects that have cycle times that are 30-40% shorter than what they were. And Concerto allows us to go in and look at are we completing our projects at the rate or in the time that we had originally intended to. So you can see here, we're looking at this right now as a month cumulative for projects that were, here's those 2 projects that were scheduled to complete in July. Again, that brown or olive line gives us our target. We wanted to be at about 200 and a little over 220 days, 225 days, but we actually took about 240 days. So we were close, but we were still running a little bit over. And you can see this trend, and I can actually turn this trend line on as well. You can see our trend is that we are slowly beginning to bring down our cycle times more and more. So not only did we start with some aggressive cycle times, but we're actually starting to make improvements, and we're now seeing those cycle times drop even more. Okay.
Okay.
But in terms of looking at cycle time and throughput, those are a couple of the metrics that Concerto uses to help with that.
Yeah. Okay. And I assume that this is in Concerto, but my feeling is that we are talking about this not often enough. Obviously, we want to have improvement by using software, but a lot of time I hear companies that they are working and working and working and working, and when I ask them, did you get better? And what are the reasons for it? They don't know. Okay, so very good. Thank you. The next point, the next question is regarding staggering projects. High work in process, as we saw in the vicious cycle, increases throughput and reduces the reliability. And this creates pressure to start earlier, and we have this vicious cycle. Therefore, the company has to manage the work in process so that projects no longer, let's say, chronically get in each other's way. And to achieve this, projects have to be staggered in a sensible way based on customer requirements and on the capacity of the company. So, and how does Concerto do that?
Very good. So if I can have the screen back again, Uwe. Yeah. I think before I jump directly into this idea of staggering projects, I'd like to just very quickly talk a little bit first about the individual project itself.
Okay.
Because I think it's important to understand one of the kind of the way that Concerto rolls up the projects into this idea of focus and finish, right? So I'm looking here at kind of a traditional, or not traditional, sorry, but just a PERT view of a project plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that, this is a fairly long engineering project, right? Here we're trying to design some solar cells actually for a satellite. So this is the whole solar array system. I shouldn't have said solar cells. Okay. And if I looked at a traditional plan for this, there would be 150 to 200 tasks that need to be completed. And, these are all, excuse me, these are all real activities that need to be done, from making designs to running tests, creating reports, and we need to make sure they're all being done at the right time. However, right, the first thing we want to do, though, is, I think you had mentioned this before, right, in order to have this low WIP, we need to make sure we have good focus. And that means that we want to make sure that not only those individual activities are being done at the right time, but they're being done in a grouped way, such that we're getting that kind of higher level, the flow of the project, done even faster. So if I take a look at like this activity for the preliminary analysis, right? We've actually grouped all this work together, done by different resources, so that we can make sure that it's getting done as quickly as possible. So we call this kind of a two-tier approach, and it'll make sense as I get into the priorities in a little bit, right? But I just wanted to share that with you because we're taking this idea of individual activities, rolling them up into a higher level task that really defines the flow of the project. And then as we move into the staggering side, again, keeping this idea of management attention and management focus and overall organizational focus at the pipeline, we want to take that idea of roll up and bring it one level higher again. So instead of trying to, for lack of a better term, play this Tetris game when we're staggering, where I'm trying to, fill the holes for each individual resource, I'm actually going to stagger the projects on what we call a phase or a virtual drum. So I'm going to look in the organization and say, where is it within the projects that really is the controlling factor of how many projects that I can do? And in this case, I've created this phase, just called it a red phase, right? But it's a piece of the project where I have a lot of different resources working, a lot of different activities going on, but this is truly the constraint in the organization. If we kind of compared that to manufacturing, right? This, you may not be looking at a single machine in the manufacturing, but you may be looking at a group of machines that are all working together, and that is your constraint, right? So
yeah,
same idea of, really what is the constraint in the organization? Then Concerto gives me the ability to be able to, and in this case, I've made a very stark contract. I said we could only do one at a time, right? But now Concerto can go in, and based on this, it'll stagger my projects based on this ability to only do one of these phases at a time. And I think we'll come to it a little bit later, but we can now do a lot of what ifs using this, whether it's increasing my capacity to see how that affects other resources in the organization. I can move projects around very simply. So I can take this Gaia project, I can make it a higher priority if I want to, and I can run this scenario again and see how does that affect my other projects. So it gives me the ability to, at the beginning of the year, build my portfolio of projects to see, am I getting more throughput? And now I can start executing to that.
okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Uwe. Stop here. There you go.
So this staggering of the projects looks very good, but we have customers, and customers have their own ideas based on business attention, obviously, about when they want the results of a project delivered. And it may happen that a customer request cannot be fulfilled due to the available capacity, and the customer insists on his desired delivery date. So in some cases, the capacity of the company can be increased so that we are able to fulfill the need of the customer. But then we should know, will we be able in time to increase the capacity, and which resources do we need for that? And can we do this without jeopardizing the reliability of the other projects? So how does Concerto help us with that?
Great question, Uwe. Right. So I think one of the first things that we need to keep in mind is how Concerto looks at resources in the organization, right? And at a resource level, we build this resource hierarchy, if you will, right? So I may start out saying that I have an engineering group, but within engineering, I have several different skills. Maybe I have some mechanical engineers, some software engineers, electrical engineers, and even some of those folks might be slightly cross-trained. Right? So I think first off, having that ability to have this resource hierarchy where I can identify what are the skills in my organization and plan at that skill level. So now I can identify, is it electrical engineers that I need more of? Is it my overall engineering capacity that I need to increase? Where is that? That's an important thing, right? Because too often I hear people say, well, I need another Jonathan, right? Well, how do I go hire another Jonathan? You know, if I'm scheduling at that level, it doesn't work, right? And software, sometimes software is very limited on being able to say, well, I use Jonathan because he has this unique skill set and I can't model that. This hierarchy gives us the ability to do that. Once we have built that model and we get into pipelining, one of the what ifs that we can do, and I'll change my settings here, one of those what ifs that we can do is we can go in and we can increase the capacity of our organization. So in this case, I'm going to increase the capacity of this red phase so that I can now do more, right? And if I do the pipeline based on that, it's going to show me now that I can do 2 projects at a time. So it pulled all my projects in. Now, maybe I only want to do that capacity for a certain project, or maybe I only want to increase the capacity for a certain time frame. These are all things that we can go in and change to say, okay, add capacity 6 months from now and only have that additional capacity for 3 months, right? So we can make those decisions as we go along. We can make it as complex as we want to. Once we've built this portfolio, then I want to go in. Now I do want to go down to this resource level. And I want to start looking at whether it's at my higher level, my overall group level, or whether it's at what we call an individual contributor level, the next level down. I can look and see what is my capacity and how many do I actually need. And what we'll find is that it's going to typically be just a few resources that are actually overloaded, right? And I notice this is with the way things are, this is going off my screen just a little bit here. There we go, sorry. So, you know, as I see that, you know, what resources I need to bring on, now I can hire 1 or 2 or 3 more folks and meet that capacity need that I have. So I can go through all my different resources and see where am I significantly overloaded, make the decision on can overtime handle that, just the, you know, the natural uncertainty of projects, will it get absorbed, or do I actually need to go hire a few people? So it really all starts again with building that portfolio that meets my customer needs as well as my business needs, and then going back and looking at, are there strategic places where I need to add some capacity, either short-term through contracting or systemically in the organization and hire more people.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Uwe?
Okay, yes, thank you. So sometimes it is possible to increase capacity, but in other times it will not be possible. And if it's not possible to increase capacity in time, I'm in a dilemma. Which project shall I play again the Tetris, as you said it? So which other project would have to be postponed by how much time to make it possible to meet the customer's desires deadline? And can Concerto help us with that?
Yeah, very good. So let me this is where I want to get into some of the what ifs, if you will, in the pipeline scenario that we're talking about here. So let me jump back to my overall pipeline. Right. And so Concerto gives us the ability to do not only what ifs, but it also gives us the ability to save those what ifs so that later on I can go back and take a look at these and see which one do I really want to put into place. So you've already seen that I can move projects up, like I moved the Gaia project, and that caused other projects to get pushed out. Well, let's take a look at this Kronos project, 435 here. And I really wanted it to be completed on September the 4th, but right now, based on capacity, it's saying it's going to be the 28th. Maybe this is an extremely critical project and an extremely critical customer. So therefore, I want to force this project to finish on the 4th. If I do that, again, now I can run my algorithm and see what is that going to do to my other projects. And you can see now the Gaia project has been pushed out, as well as the Athena project was pushed out more. Right? So I can play these trade-offs. And as I'm doing this, as I said, I can go in and I can actually save these scenarios. Okay, I can save these scenarios. Move this out of my way. Okay, and later on, I can call these scenarios back up, so I don't have to have, all the management team in the organization sitting in a room. I can give I can have my master scheduler go off, give them some direction, run several different scenarios, and then, once they have all these scenarios run, we can come back and we can quickly flip through them by bringing up, and opening all these different saved scenarios and see what is the result that I want to do. Add capacity here, move these projects around, freeze some projects, all these what ifs. I can quickly go through them. And then as I want to add new projects, you'll see I have new projects on the bottom here. I can quickly turn these new projects on. Again, I can prioritize them wherever I want them to be prioritized in my overall portfolio, which is a great thing, right? So if I'm controlling WIP, now I'm no longer starting everything, right? So I can do this, every month or every quarter or twice a year, whatever fits for your organization. And even though I'm bringing a new project in, it doesn't have to go to the bottom of the list. I can say, okay, the priorities in the organization have changed, so now I'm bringing a new project in, but I'm actually bringing it ahead of these projects that haven't started yet. And now I can see what is the impact of bringing these new projects in, and when can I commit them to the customer.
Okay, very good. So you can play around and define different scenarios and decide between those.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So even if we reduce work in process, we do not so much project as in former times. We will still have the projects competing on management attention and on resources and so on. And to achieve that, the projects, the tasks, the phases of projects and so on, that they start in the correct, for the company, in the correct order, and that they are provided with resources, not thin but good, that they are not interrupted, that they receive management attention as necessary, and that they are be completed as soon as possible, so that the people are able to work in this mode of focus and finish. For that, I think we need clear and robust priorities. And what we have learned from Eli Goldratt is that he told us you only need to know the completion of the project and the buffer consumption and combine those two informations, and then you have a priority. And how will Concerto use that to help the managers, to help the resources, help the project managers, and so on? Can you answer this, please?
Very good, very good. So I'll start, I think, first with talking about the actual task level priorities themselves. Okay, we'll come to some of the more project manager reports, I think, in a later question. But in terms of at the task management, what we call the task management or the specific task level, I showed you in that project plan how we create this two-tier or approach where we have a overall high-level task, and then we have the individual activities that contribute to that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up a specific manager in the organization named Greg Smith, right? And Greg is, as you can see, is going to be responsible for activities on multiple projects, and it's going to have activities that are, in multiple stages within the projects themselves. So starting on the left-hand side, you'll see this number in color, right? So what Uwe was talking about, comparing the buffer as well as the project in. So really we're comparing the criticality of each activity. And the nice thing about using the buffers is it gives us a way to normalize this criticality, if you will, or this priority across projects, right? Regardless of whether I have one project that's only 6 weeks long and I have another project that is maybe 6 months long, right? Even though they're different lengths, because I'm using this idea of a buffer as a percentage of my project, I now have a way to compare equally how critical is a task on project number 1 compared to how critical is that task on project number 2. Right? So the reds, of course, are my most critical, followed by my yellows and my greens. You'll see here that Greg has work that he is responsible to get done. And now this is not Greg doing the work, right? Greg is a manager. He's responsible to get it done, but he has individuals doing the work. Right? So he has work on this Tacanis 32 project, this Kronos 57 project, Pisces 52, and Apollo 95. So there's several projects that he's trying to manage work on. And it puts it in a nice, easy to follow order where I can say, okay, my most important thing to do right now is this number 1 activity, right? And whether I'm Greg looking at it, whether I'm Greg's next level manager looking at this, the priority is always going to be the same for whoever comes and looks at this. Okay? Now we'll come to this, I think, in a little bit, right? But below that, right, because this product build is a large activity. Uwe talked about this, about having simple projects that are robust, right? Which means we need to define the flow at something higher than that individual drawing or individual test that needs to be done. However, I still need to understand what are the activities that need to be done. So I'm prioritizing this overall product build, but with Concerto, we go the next step where I'm actually able to capture all the individual activities that need to be done by individual contributors. And at this point, I am actually assigning this to the specific resource that's going to be doing it. So like George and Jason, right? So my priority carries from my higher level product build into these individual activities. But again, I have this consistent priority across all my projects. So it's a very simple screen. When users log in, they're taken immediately to their priorities. It filters for them automatically, and it lays it out based on this criticality, which is consistent across the entire organization.
So in this case, Greg is a task manager, and he has to deliver work to a project. And for that, he has to know what has to be done first and what has to be done later.
And Uwe, the one thing I'll add to this is, if I can interrupt, I'm sorry. The one thing I'll add to this is, Concerto not only looks at what needs to be worked on today, but you'll notice that there's work, and I can change my horizon and make it longer, but I can look out in the future, and Greg can now see also what is the work he needs to be preparing for, making sure that I have all the materials, making sure I have all the information, and start to plan in the future.
Okay, very good. So let's say I'm not a task manager if I'm Greg, but let's say I'm the CEO of the company, and 2 of the project leaders are standing in my door, and both of them want my attention. And how do I know which one of those project leaders has to wait and which one of those I give my attention now?
Very good. So let me move over into some of the reports that we have. Right. So this is getting into, and you talked about the transparency, I think, earlier. I agree with you that too often software is about just how do I regurgitate data? How do I try to bring that transparency through data? I think there's one thing though that is very important for software to bring, and that is a forward look. So the transparency should be about how do I look forward, right? If we think about, and an analogy that I can use and people can think about is the GPS in their car today, right? If you're old enough like I am, right, you can remember the days of trying to navigate with a paper map, right? And it was great for building the plan of how you wanted to go, but you never knew what was up ahead of you. Concerto is now bringing that idea of the GPS into project delivery. So it's not focused on where you've been. It's always now producing reports that are looking forward to understand where is the bottleneck? What are all the alternative paths to my project, and where should I be focusing? So while you're absolutely right that we need to be focused on how do I deliver projects faster, there's one kind of vital piece of information that we have found and we've developed into Concerto, and that is how do I look for, bring transparency, if you will, looking forward to see where do I need to focus. And I think that's really what you're talking about here. So as I'm the executive, I'm standing there and I want to know, where should I focus my attention, right? You've shown the fever chart or the buffer chart already, right? So you can see that I have some projects that are extremely high in the red, but here I have this Tacanis project that's nearly done. So, I don't know for sure, maybe there's some specific activity that I need to, as a manager, I need to break that roadblock, but it may be that this project just needs to finish out right now. It only has a few days of work remaining. Then I have something like this Kronos project where, I'm really at risk of running out of time to get this project done. And it looks like I still have a significant amount of work. Maybe that's where I need to focus my attention. Of course, I'm going to look at these red projects first as an executive in the organization and see where do I need to get involved with that. Right. On the bottom, now I can dig into a lot more information about these individual projects, right? I can see, when is it due? When am I projected to get it done? How much delay am I going to have? And as I said, Concerto can look at these different paths, if you will. So one of the unique things is I don't have to go back to my project plan. Concerto gives me the ability to actually drill in to each of the work streams, if you will, inside the project. So this project has 5 different work streams running in parallel, right? And even though I have 3 streams that are all showing some delay, right, I'll notice that the very first one has 24 days of delay, where the next one only has 15, right? So, people always come to management with all these individual activities that are stuck, right? And it's complicated for management to figure out where should I really focus my attention. Well, on this project alone, I want to focus my attention just on this first work stream. So now instead of trying to solve 3 problems here, I can really be focused and solve just one problem today on this and get this work stream back moving forward. I can drill down in and see what's all the work that needs to be done, and I can make a very strategic decision, right? Now, I've kind of given you a very detailed look at all this. One of the things that Concerto also does is it summarizes all this information very nicely into what we call an executive view. Right? So the same thing that I was looking at, I can get a very quick snapshot if I'm an executive. What are my projects that are red? For those projects that are red, what's going on with them in terms of delay, and is it getting better or worse? I can drill immediately down into that chain that I was just looking at, that number 1 chain. I can see it very quickly, so I know what's the roadblock, what do I need to go address on that chain specifically. Oops. Okay, and then there's some more information I'll cover here in a little bit, but in terms of do I have any problems from outside, what we call full kitting, I'll talk about that in just a little bit, and also do I have some specific tasks that are stuck. But what I showed you before, we can go into a lot of detail with the project managers, or as an executive, I can just get a quick 1-page snapshot and answer these questions in just a few minutes.
Okay, so I assume if I, as a CEO, look at this page in the morning, I'm well prepared for the day.
Yes. And it's
Very good.
nice thing is Concerto is 100% on the web. So whether I'm looking at this on my tablet, whether I'm looking at this, believe it or not, on my phone, it's all live. It's all real information right now. And I can drill down into get all the information that I need right from this screen.
Yeah.
I don't have to have any specific software loaded. It's all directly across the web.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So there is a
screen back.
next question. Maybe you already have answered it a little bit, at least. There will be sometimes, even if we do our best, sometimes it can happen that promised deadlines cannot be met. This will still happen, I assume. And you showed some cases at the beginning of our conversation. As soon as the company knows that a project will be late and we can't do anything about that, we should, from my point of view, we should have a communication with the customer. And as a CEO or top level salesman or something like that, I should have appropriate signals about that, early signals, so that I can have this conversation. And how does Concerto help me with that?
Very good, very good. And as you said, if I can take the screen back, Uwe. So, as you said, I think I've kind of already covered that, but the thing that I will stress is that you'll notice that whether a project is something that is just begun or whether a project is well into execution, right? One of the other powers of having buffers is that it specifically allows me to look forward from day one and understand, is my project going to be on time or am I going to be late? Right? The biggest complaint that we hear from our customers, as well as our customers, end customers, is that they always hear the project's on time, the project's on time, the project's on time, and then all of a sudden, a week before the project's supposed to be delivered, oh, we're going to be 2 months late delivering this project, right? And they struggle with, last week we were on time and this week we're 2 months behind. How does this just sneak up on us? Well, traditional project plans, if you're looking at something like Microsoft Project or you're looking at Primavera or some of these other applications, right? They never give any indication that a project is going to be late until you've completely consumed all the float or whatever measure you're using in terms of project performance, right? With the two-tier planning that we have and the ability to have this forward look ahead, right? It gives us a very robust plan, not changing. And as an example, we have construction projects that have been running for a year and a half, 2 years, and they've never had to go back to their project plan and replan their project plan. Yes, small things happen, but they're at that individual contributor level where I can make changes very easily and I don't have to go back to the project plan because it's not changing the flow of the project. Because the project plans are robust with this, now when I say, when I look at it a month into the project and I say we're now going to be a week delayed, management has the confidence that we really have to react. We are going to be a week delayed if we don't change something right now. Or if they look at it and it says we're on time, they have the confidence that we really are on time. So I think it's a combination of what you said. One, management, CEOs, they have to be willing to communicate with the customer, which means that the project plan has to be robust to begin with, and the system has to provide good information about what are the bottlenecks and are they going to actually impact the project and cause delays, so that we can make those strategic decisions today to recover the projects if they are showing late.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have talked about top level, top management decisions and attention and so on. But at the same time, projects are done by people. The managers make plans, but the work is done by people. And if we are talking about flow and good planning, we often decide to have a high-level plan, but this is not enough for the people who do the work. The large work packages of a project have to be broken down into smaller pieces so that we can work on them. And at the same time, it must be ensured that one person or a team does not have too much to do at the same time, so that they again don't go into this multitasking mode of work. And how can Concerto help us to break down the work and keep the work in process in the teams at a reasonable level and speed up the processing of the to-dos?
Very good, very good. This is the second place that the power of two-tier comes into play. All right. As I said, building a robust plan means that I have a flow of the project that is robust. However, those individual contributors still need to know, what do I need to work on? If I look at something like a large maintenance project, whether that is a shutdown turnaround at a factory level, whether that is doing maintenance on an oil tanker or a commercial airliner or something like this, there is thousands and thousands of individual work cards or activities that need to be done. In engineering, I might have hundreds of designs and drawings that have to be completed, and people need to know specifically what do they need to work on, right? So this is where that two-tier plan comes into place. One is in controlling the WIP, like you're talking about, right? So once I put this product build, what we call in process, right? So, everything comes in as a not started, I move it to in process. It means I've started working on it. Once I do that, then I'm releasing all of these activities to the individual contributors. So if I haven't started the high level task, it doesn't become WIP for the individuals below that. So if I look now at an individual contributor, I'm going to take this George Goldberg here. If I take George and bring up his work, which is specifically as an individual contributor, right? Concerto now provides this, we call it a visual WIP board. There's many different names for it. Right. But it gives me a quick snapshot of what is the work that's been assigned to me that's in my queue. What is it that I'm currently working on right now? And if I want to see it, what is the work that is sitting over here? What is the work that is completed? Okay. And one of the things that we hear from engineers is that most of my activities are pretty quick. Do I really need to go in and update this 2-day activity to say that I have 1 day remaining? And what we found is that with the two-tier planning and the higher level, I don't have to go in every day and make updates. I can, but from an engineering perspective, at this lower level of making a drawing, doing a design, running a test, fixing a crack on a skin of a fuselage or something like this, right? Really what I want to know is, what are you working on? What have you completed? And then what is it that you're going to pick up next? Now, I've released all this WIP to you. Okay, it is prioritized kind of based on what the original plan was, but now I may decide to do things in a different order. So I'll come over here and I can select what's the next thing that I'm going to start working on, and that's really all the updates that I need. Once I save this information, if I go back, so this is where the individual contributors now can get a quick snapshot of what's been assigned to them, and they can see what they're working on. When they go in and update this, if I go back to Greg as the higher level manager, right? Greg can now immediately see every day, right? Because there's multiple contributors working on this. I'm sorry, I forgot to turn that back on. Greg can see really quickly, right, what has been the impact of the changes that like George just made. What did he finish? What is he working on now? What is still remaining to be worked on? And you'll notice up here that I have Greg's input of how long it should take to finish this overall product build, as well as I have what does Concerto think it's going to take, right? And they may differ. That's okay, right? Concerto's just using an algorithm to kind of add up the time remaining and the capacity, where Greg may know something different. So they may not equal. It may be less, it may be more, but at least it's giving Greg some kind of a suggestion. It also gives Greg the ability, without going back to the project plan, that Greg can come in here very quickly and he can add more work. He can add another activity. Maybe something happened. Maybe I have to go do some additional work, a new design, a different drawing. I need to run a test to see, will this really work, right? I can add this work right here. I don't have to go back to the PMO and have them take the project out and do all this stuff. Even if this is going to be a substantial amount of work, right? Maybe another 10 days of work, I can add that. It's immediately going to increase how long I think it's going to take. I can update this duration, and Concerto will run its algorithms, and now you'll see what is the impact on the overall project as well as the overall portfolio. So the individual contributors now are not limited in what they can see. When I have only a single level plan, if I want to have a high level plan, contributors have to go do their project planning somewhere else, on a napkin, on a notebook. With two-tier planning, I get to capture the high level flow of the project, and I get to capture the details, and the two stay married together.
Michael, is there a best practice on how many tasks are for at the working level, at the detail level, versus the higher level planning level, tier 1?
Very good. That tier level flow, you know, there used to be a rule that we wanted to see those project plans be, you know, maybe 150 to 200 tasks, but that was kind of a compromise between making sure I had enough detail that people knew what they needed to do, and having a high enough level plan that I kept it simple that I could manage it. When we developed this two-tier model, we went back to a lot of our customers that had these 100, 150, 200 task projects. And we were actually able to take those 150 activities and make project plans that were only 20 or 30 activities long. But at the same time, so that's at the tier 1 level. But then at the detailed level, we were able to expand that to where now we have, within 20 or 30 tier 1 activities, we might have 300 or 400 detailed activities. So it simplified the project plans even more and got them to a level that people were actually, that's where they were talking about the flow of the project. So it made sense to them, but it gave them the ability to go and add a lot more detail of really what were the individual contributors doing. So now, you know, I no longer had to have a separate Microsoft project or a separate notebook to capture everything that the engineers needed to do. It was all captured in one location. So it's no longer a compromise. It made a much better, easier to follow flow level project because there's fewer activities, but it also gave a lot more detail to the individual contributors so that you know, they didn't have their own back pocket schedules.
Okay, great. Just that I understand it right. If you have the top level plan, level 1, with 20 or 30 tasks, and 200, 300, 400 detailed tasks on level 2, and we still have a very big project, like building a platform in the North Sea for oil. Such a detailed task still can be quite big, with more than one person with a week or longer, right?
Yeah, so that's a great example, Uwe. So if I go to something that's like a large, so I'll take a large construction project. If I go do a new, nuclear power facility, or I do an offshore oil rig, 20 or 30 tier 1 activities is probably not going to be enough. There, we're probably going to be back into that 150, 200. Maybe we've even had some project plans that would go as high as 300 activities at that level. And even those can still be very large, because those projects may go on for 3 and 4 years, right? And at that point, now we're talking about having the tier 1 detailed activities being well into the thousands. We might have 5 or 10,000 detailed activities.
Okay.
Right? Now, that's not to say that detailed activities may not still be multi people, right? You may have 3, 4, 5 people all doing a lowest level. If I think about a construction project, where even if I go in to do finishing work on a single apartment, right, there might be 4 or 5 people that are going in and doing just the flooring, the finishing of the flooring, right? So it doesn't preclude you that it's a single person. It may still be a team style effort.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my next question is in a slightly different field. Experience shows that projects do not run as planned. I think you would agree with that. There are delays. We have even sometimes we have unexpected accelerations. Happens too. And we want to learn from experience. And talking about theory of constraints, and the world is simple, not complex, we assume that we always, again and again, have the same phenomena that slow down projects. And if we succeed in identifying these phenomena and find an effective way to influence them, this should have an accelerating and cost-reducing effect on future projects. So how does Concerto help to identify the reasons for delays, which, if effectively addressed or influenced, would have a significant impact on future performance? How can you do that?
Very, very good. Very good. So Concerto has a piece to it that is kind of a self-learning tool, if you will, because we want to be able to go back and understand what is causing delays in my project. I'll start here on the task list just because I want to bring this out. You'll notice this column I have called help needed. So if something is causing this activity, this task to be delayed, and I cannot work on it, then I want to identify what is it. Is it a resource? Is it materials? Is it tools? What is the reason why? And so we're capturing this information, and the Concerto is constantly monitoring, how much delay is this causing? Now, many years ago, Ellie challenged realization to come up with this idea of how do I take critical chain or critical chain software system, and how do I make it this ability to self-learn, or at least point management in the right direction of being able to improve their projects. So we developed this module we call the buffer diagnostics. It's still on the web, but it is a little bit of a separate module to Concerto. And the reason it's separate is, typically you want to get some runtime in 6 months, a year of getting projects done. So then you can really start to develop this analysis of what is causing your delays. So I'll go in first and I'll look at that help needed. And what Concerto's doing is it's going in and looking at what are the reasons that the users are putting in. So in this case, like waiting for resources, 22 times a manager said that an activity or a task is getting stuck because it's waiting for resources, and that's actually causing a delay to the project. This is an important piece, right? Sometimes I may have an activity that's not making progress, but it's on a feeding chain and it's not causing a delay to the project. We're really looking for the reasons projects get delayed. Not tasks get delayed, but projects get delayed, right? And so there's 22 times that waiting for resources caused a delay. And of those 22 times, it caused a total of 281 days of project delay. So this is across all the projects that we've completed in the database. It's looking at how often is it happening and how much impact is it having. One of the great things about the two-tiered approach is that, you know, at this higher level, projects, even though they're different projects, the flow of the project is very, very similar, right? And so we're finding that it's really creating a templatized environment for our multi-projects. At the detail level, it's going to be different, but at the flow level, they're going to be very similar. So now it gives me the ability to actually drill down and see task by task, not only by reason code, but by task, what are the tasks that are consistently causing delays in my projects? So it gives me that same piece of information of here's tasks that have been consistently causing delays and how much delay have they been causing. Again, this is specifically not the task took longer, but because the task took longer, the project was delayed. Right? And
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Uwe.
This is based on the assumption that we are working with something like templates for the project plans.
Yes, and what we find again is at that tier 1 level, in a multi-project environment, you have a lot of the same repeating tasks. So,
yeah.
You know, in engineering, I may have a preliminary design, or I may have a, you know, consistent, structural analysis that I have to do. If I'm looking at aircraft maintenance, right? I have, my inspections, my fuselage inspections. Even though I may have a completely different fuselage inspection from one aircraft to another, I still have this high-level task of fuselage inspection that is the same. I'm always going to do that on every aircraft that I do.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Concerto allows you to now really be able to hone in and see where do I need to do improvements, or where do I need to go back and make some adjustments in my project plans. Okay.
Is there a best practice on who uses these reports? Obviously, the project manager may, but who else does?
That's good, Craig. I think it's kind of a group thing, right? It's not about an individual project, because this is more systemic. It's not looking at one project that might be looking at tens, if not even hundreds of projects at a time. And so it's really more at a higher level in the organization, maybe a director of the PMO, or maybe even getting into the COO level of where do we need to go and do initiatives in the organization to try to improve our performance.
Good.
Okay, thank you. My last question is about growing the company. So as a company grows, it must not only sell more, but also expand its capacity, depending on how the business actually develops. Not only on plans, but how the business actually develops. In some resource groups, you can expand the capacity in time after the order has been received from the customer. In other resource groups, you need preventive resource building up to be able to accept more and more orders if you want to grow. So, and how does Concerto help to decide which resources to build up, when, and by how much?
Very good. So I think, Uwe, this goes back to the pipeline model that we were looking at before, and I'm maybe a little bit of a repeat of what we've already covered in the pipeline module. Because I think it really comes down to this is a strategic question in the organization of what type of business are you going to go after, right? As you're adding more projects. So I go back to with the two-tier plan, we can build templates that define the flow, which means now we don't have to have real projects to build our portfolio for next year. We can load more of these templates, right? And with having this idea of the resource hierarchy, we can quickly look and see, where is it that we need to have more capacity. So we're going to start with bringing in these templates into our pipeline. We're going to build our portfolio based on what is the target of the company. Maybe I want to do, if I'm looking at this, maybe it's the Chronos style project. I want to do, additional Chronos style projects, or I feel we can go out and sell more of these projects. So I'm going to add more of these projects to my pipeline, and I'm going to keep squeezing, if you will, I'm going to keep increasing my phase capacity until I get that whole portfolio to fit, right? So maybe at that point, I'm going to go back in here to my phases, and I'm going to increase this to 3, or maybe I'm only going to increase it, 6 months from now, but it's the same idea. And I'm going to see what does that do to my overall portfolio? Does it fit? Once I have this portfolio that's fitting in the time frame that I need to, right? And again, this is going to be built with templates. It's not real projects right now.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my capacity or my resources in the organization, and I'm going to take a look and see, where do I need to go and hire more people to be able to meet this portfolio. So, what used to take weeks and weeks and weeks for our customers of sitting down and trying to understand, where should we hire, and people would say, well, we need 20%, so let's just go hire 20% more in every department. Right now, within a few days, a week at the outset, we can go through that entire analysis and we can drill down and know I need to hire specifically, these 10 people, or 10 skill sets. I shouldn't say 10 specific people, but 10 skill sets.
Yeah, 10. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So, I have asked a lot of questions. I think 10 of them, but maybe there are some specific functions inside of Concerto you would like to mention, even if I'm not asking for them. So is there something you would like to point out, how, in addition to the things we have talked about, Concerto contributes to more projects in less time?
I think there's just one piece that we haven't been able to cover, and it's very unique to Concerto, right? That, projects, while they have a lot of work that's done internally, organizations rely on outside organizations as well. That may just be the customer themselves to give information, that may be vendors to provide things. And they're typically not part of the project plan. We're not capturing all those individual details that customers or vendors need to do. But we are, often delayed, or projects are dependent on the delivery of those. So one, it's important to know when do I need it so I can communicate that with my vendors or customers. And two, it's important to know if it's coming late, what's going to be the impact of it. So we have this activity that we call a full kit. It's a task inside of the project plan that we put in, but it's treated a little bit differently in that it's not a task that happens on a finite date. It's actually something that has to happen over a long period of time, and it's managing all of these external inputs, right? So in this case, I have these full kits that are, oh, thank you, Uwe. Thought I was sharing. So I have these full kits that are really just checklists of the things that need to be completed. And I should have somebody specifically responsible to make sure these are happening. If it's the case of, it's materials that are coming in from a vendor so that I can do an assembly or something like this, then, maybe this is actually directly integrated with your ERP system. So I'm not doing things manually. It's just information is automatically being fed by your ERP system. But what's more important is knowing, first off, when do I need to tell the customer that I need it? That's what we call the due date. But then as I get into execution, if I look here at this Aquarius project, I said I needed this information in May 19th, but the vendor has now told me that they're not going to be able to deliver everything until June 30th. So here I am ahead of time. it's still before I needed the material. The vendors now told me they're going to be late, and that I can now analyze, is that late delivery going to cause me any delays in my project? Right? Where before it was always a very manual process and a lot of guessing of is the material that's coming in, is that delay going to cause me a problem? Now it's directly tied into the project. And again, especially if it's material, it's directly integrated into your ERP system. And so immediately, within a day of knowing that there is a delay from the vendor, we know exactly how it's going to impact our project. I think that's the one additional piece that is unique to Concerto that we didn't cover, that is very powerful, and we have a lot of companies using that today, especially when there's a lot of outside inputs.
Okay, very good. Craig, do you want to add something from the point of view of sales? What has to be said? What is Concerto is very good about?
Yeah, thank you. Generally speaking, as Michael laid out the Concerto system is designed for the enterprise. It's not designed just for a project manager. So we take a holistic view, and the way we license it is not, if you have HR working with designing out or figuring out where you're going to be hiring, or you have your COO working with an overview, the entire organization to see where you need to be adding resources and what things you should be working on to reduce the cycle times of projects. We're not adding, you'd be adding users, but in the Concerto world we license it by based on the organization. So instead of discouraging usage, we license it with an unlimited user license. So we're trying to encourage users, even though we realize that there are going to be some users that may be in there maybe once, twice a quarter, or even once or twice a year. If your VP of sales may be working with you on with a new customer on trying to decide when they can fit a new project in, if you're a make-to-order customer. So it is a system-wide or enterprise-wide approach, and we encourage usage versus trying to nickel and dime you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a good bridge to my very last question. The last question is: software is necessary but not sufficient, is it? So what should a company that wants to use Concerto to make more projects in less time have in mind in order to achieve the desired improvement effects quickly and sustainable? What else besides software?
Yeah, that's good, Uwe. Let me take that. I think, organizations that want to move away from the traditional project management or project planning, if you will, into critical chain, some of the things that they have to look at is really what you mentioned in the very beginning. I think the biggest one is this idea of staggering projects, right? It's not just about putting a piece of software in and assuming things are going to change, especially if your focus is around more projects faster. The software there is to support a lot of the processes that you've already talked about. So I think, partnering with somebody like VISTEM, having, an organization that can help our customers go through all the steps that are required to build the processes, to do the pipelining, and really have that buy-in around staggering the projects to get the low WIP is important. So, like I said, I think it's the big piece is that finding a partner with VISTEM to be able to put those processes in place is very important.
Okay, thank you. Good. We have talked about software, and just to be sure that we all have the same framework, change is not about software, change is about changing behaviors, and by that changing results. And the core elements of more projects in less time are fewer projects at the same time and robust tactical priorities. And you have shown us how Concerto contributes to that. We can't end this session without saying thank you to two people that are not in this webinar. One is Dr. Goldred. Obviously, he can't be here. He's the founder of Theory of Constraints and author of The Goal and Critical Chain. And the other one is Sanjeev Gupta, let's say your boss, founder and CEO of Realization Technology, who has in a tremendous way contributed to critical chain and to how projects become more reliable and faster, and people have fun working on projects. So thank you again to you, Michael. Thank you to Craig for this 1.5 hours. Part of the presentation is contact information. So if you, dear participants, if you want to contact us, please do so. Thank you again to you all, to the participants, to you, to Franz, who answered questions in the background. Thank you, Franz, for helping us. And I hope you will have a good day and a good rest of the summer, and see you again. Thank you.
Uwe, thank you very much for the time today, and great job, great questions. Appreciate all the help.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good time. Bye.
Bye now. Take care.